Hello everybody, and welcome back to RPG Horror Stories. Today we have some problem players to look at. I hope that you all enjoy your stay, and let's get right into it. Our first horror story is titled, Player Threw Coffee on the DM Over an Argument. Posted by u/Downtown Debate 8075. We have been playing for 3 months now. The players are me and 3 other people, one of whom is Sarah. She's playing a Dex fighter while I'm playing a paladin. When she found out that I'm playing a paladin, she said that it's the lamest class and that only incels play paladin. I still don't know what that means or if she was even serious when she said it. Anyways, we're both frontliners, so she often tries to get a competition going between me and her to see who can get the last kill and etc., but my lawful good paladin is never interested. At one point, our party was on a quest to retrieve a relic from the grave of a legendary paladin from my PC's order. The relic had turned out to be a greatsword which you needed to be lawful good and have a strength of 18 or higher to carry. Sarah's character had reached the sword before the rest of the party and tried to lift it, but couldn't move it, and took some damage after touching it. None of the rest of us touched it up until our wizard investigated and found that only I and the party could lift it. Sarah got pissed at this and said that the DM had made this up on the spot to humiliate her. He said that he had not, it was a weapon that belonged to a lawful good hero that rejected anyone with morality that the previous owner didn't agree with. She kept blaming him for trying to make a fool out of her and ended up throwing her coffee over him. Now we're 1 player short because the DM refuses to let her play anymore. I cannot blame the DM for deciding to let her go. I don't think I'd want to play with a player who argued with me and ultimately threw a drink on me. Now in the comments the OP does say that it wasn't hot coffee, thankfully, but regardless, the DM managed to avoid burns, thankfully, but it's still getting coffee thrown over you for something so minor as just an argument about whether or not this relic could be lifted by someone else. And while a Dex fighter could use a longsword and probably make good use of it, just given the backstory of this longsword and saying that it's from a legendary paladin from the paladin player's order, kind of gives the idea that it was intended for the paladin player, and that if this longsword did not have the quality of rejecting Sarah, then she would have taken it from the intended target, which wouldn't have been very fun for anyone anyways. Overall though, I think that it's probably better that Sarah got kicked out of the group, because acting so aggressively at such a minor argument is a little bit ridiculous. Hopefully the group manages to have some good campaign fun now that Sarah's gone. Our second horror story is titled, This is a message that I got after 1 session as a first-time DM. The poster was deleted. We had 1 session and a player sent me this message. Some background, I delayed session 1 by a week and a half because of technical issues with the VTT that I was using and internet issues. When we finally got together for a game and finished session 1, I woke up to a bunch of messages. The guy messaged me for like 3 hours straight in the middle of the night and accused me of ignoring him and not taking him seriously. This was the final message at 2 AM after he sent a bunch of hateful ones. I was asleep, not ignoring him. This was my first time DMing, which everyone was aware of. I almost quit there and then. The things that he mentioned were also untrue, such as the name of the city/world and all that such. He just wasn't paying attention. It was session 1, but more like session 0.5, just setting up the story and world while in character, and everyone was aware of this. I had everyone's backstory and everything. During the session, this player commanded the entire time, was a typical main character type, and took over way too much. He then blocked everyone in the server and dipped before waiting for a reply. 4 of us ended up sticking together, and the group is still going strong nearly a year on. I found this guy from Reddit's LFG. It's tough to find decent players these days. And the Discord message from this problem player himself. What the fuck? Are you serious? I'm trying to give you a last chance to get some help on your campaign and to have a conversation, and you're resigned to being, whatever this is, apathetic? Arrogant? Whatever, I don't give a fuck. Here's some feedback you need to hear but aren't asking for. You suck at communicating with your players, as evidenced here and in the server, You didn't care what anyone's characters were, and you didn't take the time to collaborate around those characters. Why bother making them special or interesting, or having motivations if they don't matter to your story? Speaking of, why couldn't you prompt any of us that we should give our character a reason to want to join the Citadel? In fact, you went so far as to hand-wave away that motivation as, for whatever reason, instead. That could have informed the character's decision process. That could have been fun to build up a story around. Imagine the story being that much richer if characters are forced to deal with the ramifications of the Citadel's betrayal. But we couldn't do that because it's not a story we had any knowledge of before the first session. Collaborative stories being what D&D is about after all, we didn't come to hear you tell us a story. We came to participate in one, with choices and relevant histories, not that you care. Which leads me to apathy. You come across as lazy and disinterested. You didn't even do prep, didn't name your fucking city for fuck's sake, and you spent all your time doing something to make Foundry work for like 2 weeks? No one but you cared about Foundry. We offered to use Avray or Roll20 or Theater of the Mind, and the truth is that any of us could have created that first encounter as an improv session. It all could have been done in Theater of the Mind, and it railroaded everyone to exactly one outcome with no decisions for us to make. And now, I'm trying to patiently have a conversation with you about it, and you don't have the goddamn decency to discuss it like an adult. How fucking arrogant! This campaign is most definitely not for me. I'd say good luck, except you already got super damn lucky with the group of players that you have here and are absolutely wasting their potential. What a disappointment! What a fucking shame! Yikes. That's quite the message sent at, what did the OP say? 2 a.m.? Yeah, a little ridiculous. Perhaps there was a time zone difference and the, angry player was in some other time zone and assumed that the DM was in the same, but regardless of that, it is quite the, drag on the DM for this player to feel so entitled to just absolutely ragging on them for very little reason when they had issues, had to set up. They're a first-time DM, for goodness sake. Like, DMing is not easy work, and even if it is true that the encounter that they had could have been set up just improv, or that the OP didn't spend a lot of time in world building, which they say wasn't true, but regardless of all that, it's difficult for first-time DMs to get into the game and be comfortable and provide, like, really incredible first sessions because, you know, like, they're still new, they're still learning, give them some grace. And regardless of all of that, don't be so mean. Our third horror story is titled, Whiny Player Gets Mad That the Entire Party Doesn't Go Back on a Side Mission Everyone Agreed on because he didn't. He then proceeded to nearly make the DM cry by calling her campaign padded. Posted by you/expertindividual185. I joined this table with a world that has a war going on that's escalated into one of those war to end all wars. This war will change the world forever, and as players, we have to make sure that the war has an outcome where the world is benefiting from it. Overall, the campaign was pretty epic. With all of the different factions being so different and the large-scale battles going on, this was a good 90 hours of gameplay total. But there was one player that made 30 of those hours absolutely excruciating. This player was notorious for being selfish and always trying to ensure the survival of his own characters, sometimes even throwing party members under the bus to do so. And whenever the party did something selfless, he would bitch, cry, and moan like a child. Whether it was freeing slaves, retrieving food for starving villagers in a famine, or getting a stolen family heirloom back from a robber, he would complain the entire time. So there is this place in the world known as Paradise. A place where there's plenty of food, nice weather, but only the people who are pure of heart can go there, meaning that people will use it as a safe haven from the war. In this quest, we were supposed to escort a refugee family to the Paradise. The mother was pregnant, the father was sick, the son was blind, and the daughter had anxiety. But they had each other and loved one another very much. The whole party essentially unanimously decided to help them because we weren't heartless monsters. Except, of course, this asshole. He just said no, and got confused when we started doing the quest anyway. He said that because he said no, we can't do the quest because the whole party needs to agree. The DM herself said that he doesn't need to do the quest. He huffed and stomped along with us. Throughout the mission, which took a few hours, he was acting like a passive-aggressive dickwad and would make snide comments and jokes about the sun being blind, and I have to admit some of them were pretty funny. But eventually, I got fed up with his whining and said that he can either shut up or get his ass on the bench, which he did. After the quest, he had the audacity to say that we can't do side quests anymore because they're boring filler and slowing down the game, which hurt the DM's feelings because she put a lot of effort into making the world feel big and loved writing the side quests, because they added to the campaign's world and made it feel alive. He then doubled down, saying that he just wants this campaign to end and that we're forcing him to play and that the only reason he's still playing is because he can't have 2 games going at once. The DM was on the verge of tears, and he didn't want to play and was just playing out of obligation. The entire party voted him off the table, and he looked really annoyed and relieved. We got back to playing, and it was amazing. Also, since I was the one who was praising her for having such well-written side quests, the women gave birth to unexpected twins and only came up with a name for one of them. They named the other baby after my character. Very strange reaction by the problem player. I don't really understand why he feels like he's being forced to play in this game when Dungeons & Dragons or tabletop games in general are very much a voluntary position. You are not contracted to be there, you are not getting paid to be there, other than maybe some paid DMs, but as a player, you have so much freedom to just say, actually, I don't want to do this, bye-bye. And from just the story, I don't know this group's dynamic, but it doesn't seem that this person was like very close friends or family with them, so there wouldn't even be that kind of obligation going along with it. So why he felt the need to stick around for 30 whole hours, bitching about it and wanting the campaign to end is just beyond me. I am glad that the other players kicked him out though, because the DM does not deserve such disrespect at her table. Especially when everyone else is enjoying it and no one else has a problem with it. Like, I hope that he enjoys his other game and that he doesn't ruin it for people too. Our 4th and final horror story is titled Fireball Enthusiast Demands Infinite Spell Slots, posted by u/BalderGuy. If anything, this story just proves that because someone is a friend doesn't mean that they'll make a good D&D player. Because a few months ago, a friend of mine wanted to play D&D with our group, and, well, this experience honestly makes me question his intelligence, and I don't mean his D&D stat. So, we were all level 6 by this point, which worked out perfectly for him since Fireball was basically the only spell he knew from D&D, and he was obsessed with it. He rolled up a Goliath sorcerer, and of course chose Fireball along with a bunch of other fire-based spells and cantrips. He said that his character was basically more like a firebender than a real sorcerer. This was a bit eyebrow-raising. I mean, it's possible to play a character like that, but it will be harder for a new player to play such a specific anime-inspired spellcaster like that. Nevertheless, he rolled up the sorcerer and jumped right in. We were all at the tail end of a dungeon crawl when the sorcerer joined the party. We made it to the dungeon boss fairly quickly, and from that point on, it became readily apparent that Sorcerer was a one-trick pony. Every turn, he used Fireball, even when he could easily have done what he needed to do with cantrips or lower-level spells, without blasting the party. But it got the job done. But this trend continued, even after the boss battle, with him only using Fireball to break down doors, fight low-level enemies, light candles and bonfires, robbing random campers we encountered, etc. To him, the answer to any problem was Fireball. We even, at several points, kindly reminded him that he has limited spell slots and sorcery points, to which he would just say, don't worry about stuff like that. We fortunately were able to get a long rest in, but after the rest, he immediately found another group of campers and cast Fireball on them, killed them, and looted them. He then cast 2 fireballs on their scarred corpses to eliminate the evidence. We then jokingly nicknamed him the Fire Hobo, Fire plus Murder Hobo, and we did warn him that he might want to chill out a bit when we make it to the capital city because we don't want to be attacked by city guards, assassins, citizen mobs, etc. Our party was already somewhat evil, or at least did evil things from time to time, so morals were less of a concern than survival. After that fiasco, we made it to the capital city to regroup with the prince, and somehow Sorcerer had used Fireball 3 more times before arriving, who had hired us for the mission. After we got a chance to meet him in secret and get our next mission, we went to a city market and couldn't afford much. It was a bougie city and we didn't have a lot of money. The fire hobo was getting frustrated with the high prices until he saw a magic staff being sold that would enhance his firepower. It cost more than our party had combined, which enraged him so much that he threatened the shopkeeper. When the shopkeeper called for guards, our fire hobo started, you guessed it, casting Fireball. This next sequence would involve probably more fireballs than I've ever seen in D&D in my entire decade playing the game combined. He fireballed every shopping stall down, he fireballed the crowds of civilians, he fireballed the guards, he fireballed us by accident as we were running away. The entire city block was practically on fire by the time that he was surrounded by city guardsmen who forced him into actual combat and knocked him out while the rest of the party fled the city. The next session would see the party split, with Fire Hobo to start our next mission, a magic item MacGuffin quest basically, as we pretty much wrote him off as a dead man. Most of the session was devoted to the mission at hand, which seemed to annoy Sorcerer, but DM eventually got back to him. Sorcerer was trapped in a dungeon and underneath the royal palace as a magistrate came up to his cell and explained the charges that he was facing. As the magistrate was explaining this, Sorcerer said, "I cast Fireball on that son of a bitch and blast my cell bars down." DM then looked kinda surprised and asked, "You were just captured. How in the world do you have any spell slots or sorcery points left? I don't even know how you cast that many fireballs to begin with." The player then said, "I am a firebender, so I can cast Fireball at will." DM laughed and said, "That's not how that works." The player then tried to argue that because he never uses non-fire spells or cantrips, then he shouldn't be limited in his use of Fireball and that it would ruin his character. The DM explained how OP it would be if a sorcerer was just able to cast Fireball at will with no limits. The player then said, "Fine, I'll just take a long rest and wait for that unlucky magistrate to come back." Well, there's a time skip, so now the sorcerer is playing at the point when his trial is coming up and the magistrate returns. He tries to handcuff Sorcerer before he opens the bars, but Sorcerer just started casting Fireball again. That way he could kill the magistrate and destroy the bars. The bars budged, and the magistrate died, so a bunch of guards poured in as he kept casting Fireball after Fireball until the DM stopped him once he realized he used it like 5 times in a row. He tried arguing again that he should just have unlimited fireballs and that the DM was basically ripping the rug out from under him. DM brushed him off and told him not to sneak in extra fireballs. He then had a constable come by, handcuff him, and take Fire Hobo directly to the guillotine with no trial since everyone saw what he did. Sorcerer, out of character, is now livid and saying that the DM is unfairly killing his character off and that he's at least owed more fireballs to get out of the situation. He begs for just 15 more, and then is basically crying as the DM doesn't budge and he's negotiating and finally says, Okay, 3 more fireballs. That's literally nothing! Please! But the DM just told him that he can't use Fireball, but he does have a bunch of cantrips and other means to try and get out of the situation, even if they don't end up working. Sorcerer then cast Firebolt on his jar of lantern oil and tried to chuck it into the crowd as a makeshift Molotov in order to cause enough confusion to escape. He rolled a 4 after the DM asked for an acrobatics check, so he basically creates a slow-moving fire that's easily put out as he's taken to the guillotine, read his charges, and executed. The player is then beside himself, throwing an actual temper tantrum and calling the DM Hitler, and saying that D&D is bullshit and nerfs firebenders worse than the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and a whole bunch of other ramblings. None of us really knew how to handle the situation until he stormed out of the house and slammed the door so hard that the dogs 2 blocks down started barking. We never saw him or spoke to him again. He blocked us all and everything. The campaign is still going strong though. We just kinda look back on the story and laugh in bewilderment. It was so weird to see an actual grown man act like this. TLDR, D&D player thinks that he should get infinite spell slots to cast Fireball on basically everything and everyone he encounters. He throws a tantrum when he gets executed for burning down a city block with Fireball. Yeah, that's crazy, and as a comment, did the DM not have a good grasp on how many fireballs a character of their level should be able to cast? I mean, I know it gets a little muddled with sorcery points and all, but it seems like the DM should have clamped down on that way before he got to burning down a city block. That being said, I have played with unfun chaos elementals like that guy before and it's just a drain. Doing nothing that makes sense and just what they think is funny and or cool fuck the rest of the party. At least they're usually weeded out fast or self-weed like this guy. And the OP responds with, yeah, the DM definitely did let him get away with more than he should have. He just kind of trusted us to not use more spell slots than we're allowed to. I don't blame the DM though, we live and learn. And that's a good point. It can't really be blamed on the DM, they usually have enough on their plates, but it is crazy that this player was allowed to get away with so many fireballs, especially since it seemed he used them for basically everything that he could think of. It's a 3rd level spell, and at level 6, sorcerers only have a very limited number of 3rd level spell slots and sorcery points to convert into those slots. In total, sorcerers should have only had access to about 3 or 4 uses of fireball, because at 6th level, sorcerers have 3 open 3rd level spell slots, and it costs 5 sorcery points to create another 3rd level spell slot. At level 6, sorcery points go up per level, so they would have 6 sorcery points. And out of that, you can create 1 3rd level spell slot if you're not using any meta magic or creating other spell slots. So, really, 4 fireballs is the limit. I hate to say it. But regardless, I am glad that this guy basically took himself out of the group, because he does seem a bit main character-y and very much like he should be getting whatever he wants, and that he shouldn't be facing repercussions for just fireballing an entire town and killing, guards, magistrates, whatever. It's a little bit funny to me, that he thinks that he can get away with killing the magistrate of the guards and not get, executed or face any consequences. So, good thing he took himself out. And that will do it for our episode of RPG Horror Stories. I hope that you all enjoyed. Please let me know what you think down below. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.